Trying to navigate the real estate market, it can feel like you're trying to hit a moving target, right? Especially when you get to appraisals. So today, we're going to tackle a question that could seriously save you time, money, and a whole lot of headaches, especially in the Sunshine City. The big question is, how long is your home appraisal actually good for? All right, let's get right into it. So, if you're out there buying, selling, or maybe even just thinking about refinancing a place in St. Pete, well, you're in exactly the right place. Because the whole how long is my appraisal good for thing, it's one of those sneaky little details that can totally derail your deal if you're not watching it like a hawk. Okay, so let's not beat around the bush. What's the magic number? It's right here, 120 days. Yep, about 4 months. For most conventional loans, this is the number you really need to lock into your brain. It's the standard time frame that the big players, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, they all work with. But, and trust me, this is a huge but, it's not quite as simple as just, marking a date on your calendar 4 months out and calling it a day. That 120-day window, think of it more like a strong suggestion, not an ironclad guarantee. And really getting the little details here is what's going to make or break your deal. So let's dive in and break down what that really means. All right, first things first. Let's talk about the standard validity window. This is basically the foundation, the ground rules for everything else we're going to get into. Okay, here's the best way to think about this. An appraisal is not like a driver's license, right? It's not perfectly good one day and then boom, totally expired the next. No, it's way more like a carton of milk. Seriously. Its value, its reliability, it just kind of diminishes over time. The older it gets, the less it really tells you about what's happening in the market today. So, when does that 120-day clock officially start ticking? Great question. It all starts on what's called the effective date. Now, this is super important. That's not the day you get the report in your email. Nope. It's the actual day the appraiser walked through the property. That's day one of your countdown. Okay, so we've got the general rule of thumb. But why are we talking specifically about St. Pete? Well, because St. Pete's market has its own unique personality, its own rhythm, and that can change the entire game. So what exactly makes the St. Pete market so dynamic? Well, you've got this incredible mix of things going on. You have those high-demand waterfront condos, those gorgeous historic bungalow neighborhoods like Kenwood and Roser Park. Then there's the absolutely thriving downtown core. You throw in the seasonal ups and downs with demand, and of course the big one, hurricane season. All of this means property values can swing, and I mean swing fast. And this quote, it really says it all. In a market that's heating up or cooling down fast, an appraisal that's just 60 days old, only 2 months, might already be useless. It just doesn't reflect what's really going on. And you better believe the lenders know this. If they see the market make a big move, they will absolutely ask for a new appraisal, even if you're still technically inside that 120-day window. Okay, as if the market itself wasn't enough to think about, let's add another layer here, your loan type. Because yeah, not all mortgages play by the exact same set of rules when it comes to appraisals. All right, let's break this down. With a standard conventional loan, you've got your 120 days, but sometimes you can get that stretch to 180 days with something called a recertification. Now, FHA loans are interesting. It's also 120 days, but here's the twist. The appraisal is tied to the house, not to you, the borrower. So if your deal goes south, that same appraisal might just be used for the next person in line. And then you have VA loans. For our veterans, this is great news. You get the longest window of all, a full 6 months. So what about the curveballs? Life happens. Let's say you're well within your time frame, everything's going smoothly, but then something big changes. There are a few key things that can basically hit the big red reset button and force you to get a whole new appraisal. So here are the 4 big ones you need to watch out for. Number 1, major property damage. That's kind of the obvious one. 2, significant renovations. I mean, if you suddenly add a brand new pool, that old appraisal is out the window. 3, a sudden major shift in the market itself. And finally, probably the most common one, your closing gets pushed back and you just plain run out of time. And let's just focus on that first one for a second, because this is Florida, right? When we say major property damage, what we're often really talking about is hurricane-related stuff. And listen, even if a storm doesn't flatten the place, a lender might still say, hey, we need a new inspection or even a whole new appraisal just to make sure everything's okay. Okay, wow, we have covered a ton of ground. So the big question is, what do you do with all this information? How do you make it work for you? Let's wrap this all up with some smart strategies and the key things you absolutely need to remember. So let's boil it all down. First, remember, the standard window is generally 120 days. Second, if you're using a VA loan, you've got a much nicer 6-month window. Third, and this is crucial for us here, St. Pete's fast-moving market can make an appraisal feel stale way sooner than you'd think. This leads to the next point. Your best strategy is to try and time that appraisal as close to your closing date as you possibly can. And last but definitely not least, please work with a local appraiser, someone who actually gets the vibe and the value of St. Pete's different neighborhoods. And that really brings us to the final thought I want to leave you with. At the end of the day, the question you should be asking isn't just, is my appraisal still technically valid? The real question is my appraisal actually keeping up with St. Pete's market? If you start thinking about it that way, you'll always be one step ahead of the game.